It was the calm morning of November 9th, 2005 in Robinson, Texas, a town just south of Waco where people still waved to neighbors and left their doors unlocked. But on this day, that peaceful reputation would shatter forever. At exactly 6:11 a.m., a trembling voice cut through the stillness of the police dispatcher's line. A woman reported that something was terribly wrong inside her home. She sounded panicked, but clear. Her husband was gravely injured, the back door was wide open, and guns were missing. From that moment on, an investigation began that would expose a story few could have imagined. This is the tragic case of Darlene and Keith Gentry, a love that promised forever, but ended in a devastating crime.
Darlene Gentry was born on November 2nd, 1974, the middle daughter in a family of 3 girls. She grew up in Central Texas, surrounded by people who adored her. From childhood, she seemed destined to stand out. Friends and relatives remembered her as disciplined, full of energy, and always ready to smile. She wasn't just considered pretty, she was admired for being approachable and kind. Her blonde hair and warm personality made her a favorite among peers. Though she never competed in pageants, classmates nicknamed her the Texas Beauty Queen. She was voted prom queen, shined in the school flag corps, and often stood at the center of school events. Her popularity wasn't forced, it came naturally. People gravitated toward her because she made them feel noticed and included. After graduating from Yo High School in Cameron in 1993, Darlene enrolled at Texas State Technical College in Waco. Initially, she trained as a dental assistant, but nursing was her long-term dream, and she often told friends she wanted to make a difference in people's lives through healthcare. Meanwhile, in the same region, another life was unfolding. Keith Gentry, born on September 2nd, 1974, was raised in Robinson, Texas. The son of Weman and Glenda Gentry, Keith grew up in a tight-knit household. He had 2 sisters and a large extended family, all of whom loved him deeply. At Robinson High School, Keith wasn't the center of attention, but those who knew him admired his character. He was dependable, down-to-earth, and hard-working. Teachers described him as a young man who never complained, someone who simply handled whatever task was before him. After finishing school, Keith followed a practical path. Like Darlene, he enrolled at Texas State Technical College, focusing on drafting and welding. Later, he secured stable work as an engineering assistant at a local utility company. For Keith, life was about providing for the family he hoped to one day have. When Darlene and Keith met in college, there was an instant spark. Their personalities balanced each other perfectly. Her charisma complemented his calm, steady nature. Family and friends quickly noticed their bond. Both sets of parents welcomed the relationship, convinced that the two were meant to be together. People in their circle whispered that it was only a matter of time before a wedding would happen. But reality proved more complicated. By 1997, both had completed their studies. Darlene was eager to take the next step toward marriage. Keith, however, wasn't ready to settle down. After emotional conversations, the two reluctantly decided to separate. The breakup shocked their families. Both Darlene and Keith were devastated, unsure how to move forward without each other. In an effort to start fresh, Darlene moved to Dallas. She continued working in the dental field and tried to embrace city life. But it wasn't what she expected. The urban environment felt disconnected, and at one point her car was even stolen. She longed for the familiarity of home. Within a year, she returned to Central Texas, and as fate would have it, her paths soon crossed with Keith's once again. This time, their reunion was immediate and certain. They both knew they belonged together. In 1999, Keith proposed, and not long after, the couple exchanged vows. The newlyweds bought their first home in Robinson,
settling right next door to Keith's parents. To outsiders, life seemed idyllic. Darlene pursued her dream of becoming a nurse, while Keith continued his reliable career as an engineering assistant. With 2 stable incomes, the couple enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. Not extravagant, but certainly secure. Their dreams soon expanded to family. In 2001, they welcomed their first son, Chase. In 2004, their second child, Cody, was born. And by 2005, their third son, Cade, completed the family. To neighbours and friends, the Gentry household looked picture perfect. A beautiful couple, 3 young boys, and a well-kept home in a quiet, safe community. But beneath the surface, pressure was quietly building. Keith's job initially involved travel, often leaving Darlene to juggle her nursing responsibilities while raising 3 children. Even after Keith left his travel-heavy position for a lower-paying desk job that kept him closer to home, tensions didn't disappear. The financial hit was significant. While Keith found the new role monotonous and unfulfilling, Darlene's spending habits reportedly stayed the same. She loved maintaining a pristine home, hosting gatherings, and buying nice things, even when their income no longer comfortably supported it. Arguments about money became a regular occurrence. Keith grew increasingly frustrated, feeling that he was working hard while also carrying more responsibility for the children, often with the help of his parents. Family members noticed subtle changes. The once light-hearted couple now seemed more distant, their smiles thinner, their interactions tense. Still, neither Keith nor Darlene gave any outward indication of divorce. Keith, in particular, seemed committed to making the marriage last. But within months, that resolve would be tested in the most tragic way imaginable. The morning of November 9th, 2005 began with flashing lights in the quiet Robinson neighborhood. Police cruisers and paramedics rushed toward the Gentry home, guided by the desperate 911 call made only minutes earlier. Inside, chaos unfolded. When first responders entered the Gentry residence, they immediately realized something was very wrong. Keith Gentry, just 31 years old, lay slumped in his bed. Blood soaked the sheets. He had been shot at close range while he slept. Paramedics checked for signs of life, but Keith was already gone. The official cause of death, a single .38 caliber gunshot wound to the head. Beside him, his wife Darlene stood in shock. She told officers she had discovered the grisly scene just moments earlier. According to her statement, she had woken up around 6 a.m. to prepare bottles for their youngest son. When she walked into the master bedroom, she saw Keith lying motionless, blood pooling beneath him. The back door of the home was open, and several firearms Keith owned were missing. Darlene insisted it must have been a burglary gone wrong, but detectives weren't convinced. From the very beginning, investigators noted odd details. For one, the house didn't look like it had been burglarized. Nothing else appeared disturbed, no drawers pulled out, no electronics missing, no signs of forced entry. Only a few guns were gone, and strangely, not even the most valuable ones. Then there was the matter of the 911 call. Darlene's voice was frantic, but investigators who listened closely thought it sounded controlled, almost rehearsed. Within hours, whispers spread through the law enforcement team. Something about her story doesn't add up. Detectives sat down with Darlene to record a full statement. She repeated her account. She had gone to make a bottle for baby Cade. She noticed the back door open. She returned to the bedroom, found Keith in blood, and dialed 911 immediately. When asked about the marriage, she admitted they had financial stress but denied any major conflicts. She painted a picture of a happy home, one now shattered by a violent intruder. But behind closed doors, investigators began digging deeper into her life. The medical examiner quickly ruled out the burglary theory. Keith had been killed by a contact wound, meaning the gun was pressed directly against his skin when fired. This was not the act of a startled burglar. It was the deliberate act of someone standing inches away while Keith was defenseless in his sleep. That detail shifted suspicion sharply inward. Detectives began building a timeline. They learned that Keith had last been seen alive around 10:30 p.m. the night before, relaxing at home. Darlene, who claimed she had gone to bed beside him, became the only possible witness and possibly the prime suspect. The most incriminating clue came from an unexpected place: the household trash. Inside a kitchen garbage can, investigators found latex gloves. On them were traces of gunshot residue and Keith's blood. Tests later confirmed Darlene's DNA was also present. This discovery changed the case instantly. If a stranger had committed the murder, why would gloves linked to Darlene be left inside her own trash can? Detectives now had their first major piece of physical evidence, tying her directly to the crime. Financial records added another disturbing layer. Detectives discovered that Darlene had recently taken out multiple life insurance policies on Keith, totaling nearly $750,000. While insurance itself isn't unusual, the timing was suspicious, just months before Keith's sudden death. The policies painted a picture of potential financial motive, especially given the couple's ongoing money problems. Keith owned several firearms, but one in particular stood out: a .38 revolver. Ballistics testing confirmed that the bullet used to kill Keith matched that exact model. Yet the weapon itself was nowhere to be found. When questioned, Darlene suggested that burglars had taken it. But detectives suspected otherwise, that the murder weapon had been deliberately hidden or destroyed. By late November 2005, whispers within the small community grew louder. People who once admired Darlene began to feel uneasy around her. The image of a grieving widow was crumbling under the weight of suspicion. Behind the scenes, detectives built a case. They didn't move quickly. They knew that circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. They needed something undeniable. In December, after weeks of surveillance and interviews, investigators formally charged Darlene with first-degree murder. The news shocked Robinson. A woman once seen as the golden girl of her town was now accused of killing her husband in cold blood. Darlene was arrested, booked, and placed behind bars. But her family rallied around her, insisting she was innocent. They raised the funds to post her bail, allowing her to return home while awaiting trial. For the next year, Darlene lived in limbo. Outwardly, she played the role of devoted mother, attending her son's school events and church services. But investigators kept watching, convinced she was hiding the truth. Their patience would soon pay off. In early 2006, detectives received a critical tip. Someone had seen Darlene repeatedly visiting a small pond located on property she owned outside of town. Each time she seemed to linger at the water's edge, staring down, sometimes throwing in objects. The behavior was so odd that it raised suspicions immediately. Investigators wondered, could she have hidden the missing revolver there? To test their theory, they set up surveillance cameras near the pond. Sure enough, Darlene returned, At one point, she even tried to lower a weighted object tied to a rope into the water, possibly an attempt to retrieve something from the bottom. Detectives decided it was time to act. With divers and forensic teams on site, authorities searched the pond carefully. Hours later, their suspicions were confirmed. At the muddy bottom lay the missing .38 revolver, the very weapon used to kill Keith Gentry. The gun was heavily corroded but still testable. Ballistic analysis proved a direct match between that weapon and the bullet recovered from Keith's body. Now, detectives had the smoking gun, literally. At this point, the investigation was no longer a mystery. Every trail led back to Darlene, the gloves, the insurance, the staged burglary, and now the recovered weapon. But the most dramatic moments were yet to come. The discovery of the revolver at the bottom of Darlene's pond was the breakthrough investigators had been waiting for. It wasn't just a piece of evidence, it was the smoking gun that tied her directly to Keith's death. But prosecutors knew that one weapon alone would not be enough. To secure a conviction, they needed to build an airtight case, layer by layer, showing motive, opportunity, and cold-blooded intent. Investigators weren't finished with Darlene. Even after the revolver was recovered, they suspected she might try to manipulate the situation or hide more evidence. So they devised a sting operation. They wired a confidential informant to engage Darlene in conversation about the investigation. In those recorded exchanges, Darlene made statements that seemed carefully calculated, as if she was trying to test how much authorities already knew. At one point, she even asked about ways to make evidence disappear, a chilling indication that she was still strategizing to cover her tracks. These recordings gave prosecutors an extra weapon. They could show jurors not only what Darlene had done, but also how she had behaved afterward, as though the crime were just another problem to solve. By 2007, nearly 2 years after Keith's death, the case finally reached trial. Prosecutors laid out a clear narrative. Financial motive. Darlene stood to collect nearly $750,000 in life insurance policies. Opportunity. She was the only adult present in the home at the time of Keith's death. Means. The murder weapon was her husband's own revolver, later found hidden in her pond. Evidence. Latex gloves in her trash with both Keith's blood and gunshot residue. Behavior. Suspicious visits to the pond, recorded attempts to discuss hiding evidence, and inconsistencies in her 911 call. For the jury, the picture was devastating. Her attorneys tried to paint a different story. They argued that Keith's death was the result of a botched burglary. They suggested that someone else could have taken the revolver, killed him, and returned later to dispose of it. They emphasized Darlene's image as a mother, showing photos of her with her 3 young children, portraying her as someone incapable of such brutality. But every time the defense pointed to an alternative explanation, prosecutors countered with hard evidence. The gloves, the policies, the pond. Piece by piece, the defense narrative crumbled. The courtroom in Waco, Texas was packed throughout the proceedings. Local residents who once knew the Gentrys as a picture-perfect couple now came to watch the shocking downfall unfold in real time. Friends of Keith described him as hard-working, kind-hearted, and deeply devoted to his children. His relatives sat just feet away from the woman accused of taking his life, struggling to reconcile the smiling wife they once welcomed into their family with the defendant now on trial. Reporters filled the back rows, their headlines framing Darlene as a small-town mother with a dark secret. After days of testimony and hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a decision: guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted, gasps, tears, and muffled sobs. Darlene herself showed little visible reaction, staring straight ahead as the words were read. The judge handed down the sentence: 60 years in prison. It was not the maximum penalty prosecutors had sought, but it was enough to ensure that Darlene would spend the majority of her life behind bars.
Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of the case was what happened to the 3 children left behind. Keith's parents, grieving their son's murder, were granted full custody of the boys. They worked to give them as normal a life as possible, though the shadow of their father's death and mother's conviction lingered. Darlene was barred from contacting her children, a decision made to protect them from further trauma. For the boys, their childhood became a story of loss. One parent murdered, the other imprisoned. Darlene was transferred to the Lane Murray Unit in Gatesville, Texas, a women's correctional facility where she remains today. In prison, she faded from the spotlight, another inmate serving a long sentence. But outside the walls, her case continued to be discussed, dissected in true crime podcasts, documentaries, and community conversations. Her projected parole eligibility date is 2037, when she will be in her early 60s. Whether she will ever walk free again remains uncertain. Meanwhile, Keith's memory endures in those who loved him. Friends recall his easy laugh, his loyalty, and the pride he took in being a father. His parents often spoke publicly about the tragedy, using their grief as a reminder of how quickly life can be stolen away. In the years since, the Gentry case has become a haunting example of how appearances can deceive, how a seemingly perfect marriage can hide cracks that lead to devastating consequences. The story of Keith and Darlene Gentry is more than just a true crime tale. It's a tragedy that shattered an entire community. A husband's life cut short, 3 children growing up without either parent, a wife who traded love and family for greed and deception. For Robinson, Texas, November 2005 will forever remain a dark chapter. And for those who follow true crime stories, the Gentry case stands as a chilling reminder. Sometimes the greatest dangers come not from strangers, but from the people we trust most.